I mean, most people that are engaged in show business, we talk about shows we've seen or movies or TV or who's up, who's down, who's doing good work, that kind of stuff. But to me, that's not when the conversation gets juicy. I'm more interested in, backstories, family stories, weird events, strange things that people have witnessed.
This is Really Famous. I'm Kara Mayer Robinson, and I interview famous people. But I don't just interview them like your typical interview. I'm not really interested in those same old questions. Instead, I like to know who they really are and what they really think. Sometimes it's like listening to old friends catching up, and other times it's like eavesdropping on a therapy session. My guest today is Michael Emerson. Michael Emerson, hello. Did you watch Lost? I did. Benjamin Linus, The Others, The Island, The Hatch, hello. Michael Emerson is here. He was also, of course, Harold Finch on Person of Interest. And now he is in a new series on CBS called Evil. It's very sinister and creepy and surprising. It's a psychological mystery that unfolds week after week about the line between science and religion. It also stars Mike Colter, who you may remember from The Good Wife. And speaking of The Good Wife, Evil is also by the creators of The Good Wife, Michelle and Robert King. Check it out on CBS Thursdays at 10 p.m. Eastern Pacific. You may also remember him from Without a Trace, The Practice, The X-Files, Saw, and The Name of the Rose. But I have to tell you, he is very interesting when you watch him on screen and when you meet him in person, which you'll see in a minute. So I met Michael recently. We met after he was taping a segment for the Rachel Ray Show. And I'd like to give a big thank you, in fact, to everyone who shared questions for Michael. I posted on Facebook the day before we recorded, asking for any burning questions you had for Michael. So many of you shared, which I really appreciate. We didn't get to all of them, but we did answer a bunch. Thank you especially to the fans of Lost Fans Unite on Facebook. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. And I wish I could have asked every single question that you shared. We just didn't have enough time. We also set up a camera. So there's about a 10-minute video that you can catch of me and Michael talking about Lost and a few other things on my Really Famous YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and hit pause now. Head over to youtube.com/reallyfamous, tap that red subscribe button and the little bell, the little red bell, and you'll be all set and you can catch that video. And he looks so great. He's so fun to watch. So this was not the first time that Michael and I met. I actually wrote a piece about him for the New York Times about his Sunday routine a few years ago. I interviewed him on the set of Person of Interest, which was very cool, and we talked between takes. If you want to read that story, it's very fun and quick, and there are some good pictures in it too. I put a link in today's show notes. You'll also see his wife, Carrie Preston, who was also a guest on Really Famous last year. And I put a link in the show notes to her episode if you'd like to give that a listen. You may know Carrie from The Good Wife and The Good Fight. She plays Elsbeth Tassioni. She's in the show Claws right now, and she was in True Blood. So get ready for this conversation with Michael. It's so interesting. But first, I want to answer a question for you guys. Two of the most common questions I'm asked about Really Famous are, number one, how on earth do you book all of these celebrities on your show? The answer to that is not that simple. I've been a guest on a bunch of podcasts and radio shows recently, and I think they've all asked me that question. So I go in depth about that. If you're curious about it, click on one of the links in the show notes. I included some links to the shows that I've been a guest on recently. I also explained a lot of it in an episode of Really Famous, where actor Peter Herman from Younger came back on the show and he interviewed me. So if you want to listen to that, it's called The Cara Mayer Robinson Interview by Peter Herman. And I talk about how I land these celebrities for the show and a lot more. So the second most common question is, how do you make money doing a podcast? And actually, a lot of celebrities asked me this question too. The short answer is this: you don't make a lot of money doing a podcast. There are very few podcasters, even the hugest ones on the planet, who at this point in time are making a lot of money doing it. So I have a few sponsors who support the show, but I have to say it's the fans that make a big difference. So if you want to help out and you want to help me keep the show going, that would be amazing. I have a couple of ways you can help out. You can go to patreon.com/reallyfamous. So that's patreon.com/reallyfamous. Or you can go to reallyfamouspodcast.com/donate and toss over a few bucks. It can be $1, $3, $10, whatever. Anything helps, believe me. And as a thank you, I will give you a shout out on the show, which is what I like to do. For example, Jamie Campbell. Jamie Campbell, you have been such a major help for a long time. Jamie has been so good donating through patreon.com. And I shout out her name on the show a lot. Jamie, I appreciate your support, and it really does make a difference. So if you like the show and you want it to keep going, it would be major. I'd be thrilled, I'd be honored, I'd be happy if you want to donate a few dollars. So that's that for now. And here is Michael Emerson. So normally I don't like to have any notes, but I'm going to this time, and there's good reason. It's because I went to a Lost fan club, and they have a lot of questions for you.
Oh, good.
And I thought we could talk about evil on the video. And then we might want to talk about person of interest, too, because
Sure.
That's how I first met you.
Yeah, that's right.
You are like the best villain. You're known as the best villain on TV by many people. But do you sometimes get tired of being that?
I don't get tired of it because I don't think that's what I'm doing. I'm just a character actor. I just want to play a character. I don't really have an opinion about the character's agenda or their mission in life or the way they behave with other people. I'm just there, workaday actor with my actor toolbox, trying to solve the problems of the text, to make the scene crackle, if it's possible for it to crackle, and to make it have surprises in the performance.
So do you think about those things ahead of time, like when you're reading through a script and you're kind of like, okay, I feel like if I do this here, I can make it crackle?
Every time I read a script or a scene, I'm trying to solve the problems of the scene. Not that the scene has problems that need solving, but I'm trying to solve the problems in my mind, which is how do I play this? How do I play it in a way that I own and that won't tell the end before the beginning? How do I keep it? How do I give it a light touch, a sense of mystery? For me, it's a lot, I think, musically about as if the lines were lines of music, and I'm the singer of that music, and I try to be conscious of my own voice, what intonations I'm employing, or how I'm finding something that sounds real or funny or threatening.
Right. I hear what you're saying with the musicality to it. I do hear it in your performance. I see it. That's so interesting, and it probably does add to that whole crackle, like you're saying.
Yeah, right.
And you see it also in Evil. So, of course, we saw it on Lost, Person of Interest, so many of your other shows. You've been on so many. In the new show on CBS called Evil, it just premiered. You show up, and you come on. I don't want to give away any spoilers.
Right.
But the first episode, at least, has already aired, so I can give that away.
Yeah.
You step in towards the end of the show.
Yes.
And then what?
And the audience hasn't seen me yet, and there's no grace period. There's no, let's get to know this character. As soon as you meet me, they go to a close-up fish-eyed lens, and I'm talking to Katya, our lead, and what I'm saying sounds insanely threatening for someone you've just met in the stairwell at the courthouse.
That's right. And it's like the second you're there, you
Right.
know. So you don't even have to give anybody a big introduction.
Yeah, there's no, are we going to like this guy or not? Or, they're not going to tease the audience with, is this a good guy or a bad guy? He's full throttle villainy from the first tick.
So is Evil going to have like an ongoing storyline and then also individual stories every week because it's like a procedural? Is that kind of how it goes?
It will have contained stories, episodic stories, against a context or a backdrop of this ongoing quest of the investigators and their seeming high-stakes battle with the forces of darkness, and I seem to be a high-ranking official in those forces.
Okay, so it's a great show already so far. I haven't seen that much of it because it just came out, but Mike Coulter is in it as well,
Yeah.
and he's fun. And he was in The Good Wife, which is also Robert and Michelle King's show.
Yes.
He was great in that too. And this is your second CBS show, is that right?
Yes, I guess so.
Okay, right, because Person of Interest was CBS as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Finch for a minute.
Okay.
So was he, he was not villainous or sinister in any way. He was lovable, but at the same time, you knew him as a character right away. Just like you're saying, it is for evil. So do you like that kind of role too? Or
He was 100% a good guy.
Yeah.
But he was odd and mysterious and on some level unknowable. He lived in a world that was alien somehow to our world. Maybe that's part of it, is a quality of alienness. I like to look for that.
Okay. And the way you talked just now, that was so, I like to look for that. That was musical too. Do you talk like that in real life?
My wife would say yes.
It's so unique. I love it. And of course, then that brings us to Lost. What's your take on Ben, like after it was all said and done? Ben Linus.
Benjamin Linus was damaged goods. He was a broken man with a seemingly impossible agenda that could not be shared with others and that cost people their lives and their sanity.
Yeah, and complex. And he was another person who you just showed up and like, you knew there was something. You didn't know who he was though, but at the same time you kind of knew that guy.
But the creators turned a corner with that character, which was interesting for me, the actor. They took him from being full out the face of evil to being a sympathetic character. After the audience had lived with him for so long, the audience felt more warmly about him, I think. And they saw him suffer losses. They saw him witness the assassination of his own daughter, something like that. And they saw that he wasn't ready for that and that he had outwitted himself and that he was wrecked. So
they became empathetic, you think?
I think they did.
So that reminds me, I asked people on a Facebook fan group yesterday. I said, I'm seeing Michael Emerson. If you have questions, burning questions you'd love to run by him, let me know. I will not have room for all of them, of course, but I did write down some, and I'm going to pick a few. And one of them was, like, why do you think that everyone loves Benjamin Linus so much, even though he did so many villainous things? And I think you just answered that question, but that was one of them. He was so endearing, I think, for so many fans.
He was a bad fellow often, but he was vulnerable. And he had a mystique, I think, about him.
Yes.
I don't know what else. I don't know how much more I could say about it.
I think you said it. You said it. How much were you told about Benjamin Linus as Brad Morris early on when you got the role as Henry Gale?
Nothing. Nada.
Zip.
Zero. As far as I knew, I was playing Henry Gale, a wayward balloonist from Minnesota.
Okay, and you just kept playing him like that until,
as we went along, the behavior, the lines that were being written for me, they seemed to be a little bit at odds with that kind of innocent character, but no one was going to tell me anything. I mean, I've said this before, but there was a moment in an early episode where I went to the director and I said, You know what would be really a blast is if it turns out that I'm the leader of the forces who live on the island. And he blinked at me a couple of times and said, I can't discuss that with you.
Get out of here.
And I thought, oh.
So you knew in that moment?
Well, I guess it seemed to me like, oh, that would be a fun outcome of this thread I'm currently playing. It would make sense of what they had me doing to start with and where it seemed like it was going.
That is so interesting, right? Because I wonder if it was week to week, you're like, this seems so weird.
Right.
And then that explained it, kind of.
And I'm not one of those actors that needs to have a sit down with the creators and say, so where's this going? And where will we be at the end of season 3 or something like that? I'm happy. In fact, my policy is play the scene at hand on the day. Okay. Play that scene and play it in a neutral gear. And everything will fall into place. Because I'm not in charge of how things fall into place. The writers are in charge, and editors are in charge of how things fall into place.
So you're very present in that episode on that day.
It is, and I hate, one of the things I hate is doing scenes from 2 different episodes on the same day. Because it's, I don't know, it's too shocking. It's like playing 2 different songs, trying to play them on the same day.
Does that happen a lot? They don't just wrap a whole episode?
Not always, because the production schedules are, fairly frantic. They're tight.
Yeah.
And often the last day of episode 1 will be the first day of episode 2.
Right.
Or they may overlap even more than that. And then if some scenes didn't get shot, you may have to make them up later on.
Yes, of course.
You may be making up a scene from season 2 during the shooting of a scene from episode 2 during the shooting of episode 5 or something.
Yeah, that must be a little bit hard to kind of whatever.
Or on a Saturday, 3
of.
months in the future.
Right, and you have to get right back to that same place.
Sure.
So you're not a backstory person then, I guess. You don't create a backstory for yourself at all? Never?
No.
For any character?
No.
So you had no Benjamin Linus backstory?
No.
Did you have any theories about the island yourself?
Not many.
Okay.
I mean, we used to sit around as a cast and talk about it. We were completely in the dark. Still are, for the most part, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I
think so, too.
About many of the particular mysteries of particular episodes.
But you all would sit around and theorize, like, what do you think is going on here? And nobody would tell anybody.
Nobody knew.
But did even the producers know? Did they know? Like, did J.J. Abrams and Carlton Cuse, did they know?
I mean, they knew where the story was going. I mean, I think they were comfortable with a certain amount of mystery. I mean, JJ's TED Talk, that thing about the black box, the unknowable. The black box is more interesting than just about any human narrative that you can explore. Stick with mystery, if at all possible.
And I think that's what really gives a lot of these shows what they need to be really, really good. I think that was such a part of Lost, that even if every single question, in my opinion, wasn't answered,
right, it
was worth it. Because that feeling of going week to week, wondering what the heck is going on here, was amazing.
I think the audience sometimes gets it wrong. They think this is a series of questions or mysteries to which we are entitled an answer. But if they thought about it the way the writers think about it, which is this set of questions or mysteries is the landscape of this show, it is the backdrop of the action, then they would be a little less intent on because let's say you do get the answer, then what?
Yeah.
Anticlimactic. Do you really want answers to all of these things?
And really in life, you don't have answers to everything either.
Thank you for saying that. That's right. So true.
We all have to learn how to live with that too, and it does kind of keep life interesting, because similarly, in life, would you want to know everything?
Lost would be a less interesting program if everything were so cut and dried, if everything were explicated.
Definitely. So you don't have all the answers. So a lot of the people's questions, the fans' questions, I think, they dig deeper.
Sure.
They go way deep into what's what.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, you must know this by now.
Oh, they know the show way better than I ever knew it. Even when I was on it. I couldn't tell you what a certain episode meant, even though I'd acted in it.
Right.
I could tell them how to sing my lines. That's about all that was the extent of my expertise.
But I guess it almost seems like you knew, like almost like you knew more than anybody on the island. You know what I mean? That Benjamin Linus, it almost seemed had the key to everything.
Sure.
So they think that Michael Emerson knows everything there is to know about Lost.
They might well think that.
All right, let's try to see if you could answer any of these. Was Ben eventually able to cross over?
Not known.
Okay.
Too far in the future.
Okay. Is Ben still living on the island? You, in person, don't seem to age, Daisy May says.
I would answer that with another question. Did you see anyone age on the island? What is the nature of the island? Does the island exist in the same temporal plane as the lives we know on the planet Earth? Or is it something else? Does time have a meaning on the island?
Okay. All right. That's good. That's good. That's good. Did you actually watch the whole show? Daniel wants to know.
I watched everything that I shot. I will confess that I wasn't as big a fan of the show as my wife was. She saw all of season 1. I didn't see all of them. To this day, I think there are probably a couple of episodes of season 1 that I've never laid eyes on.
Aaron Ray wants to know, would you ever star in a spinoff? And will there be a spinoff? Asked Curtis Tyndall.
I'd say the chances are very slim that they would ever. Of course, the intellectual property, the storyline, the name, all of that is owned by somebody, and they can do what they please with it. But they would never get. I don't know. It would depend on the script.
Okay, so you would be open to it then?
I'm open to good writing.
Oh, that would be so good.
If it was something that Damon and Carlton had written,
yeah,
I would sure as hell read it.
For sure. That's so... Oh, my gosh. Everybody's going to get excited now.
Because I could trust them not to sort of just revisit or, go back and redo some. They would... The only reason they would even think of it was because they had some great idea about where to go.
Right, because right now, when you think about it, a lot of, even the greatest shows are doing these like reboots or prequels, sequels, whatever, like Breaking Bad, for example.
Sure.
So it's not like, everybody's going for it, it does seem like, at this point, and they are coming up with creative ways to do that, I think. They're not just doing like that bland redo or whatever, which nobody really wants to see anyway.
Right.
So... Who knows?
It would be a whole new deal. It wouldn't look the same. It wouldn't be the same people. It wouldn't be the same location. Even if it was, quote, the island, unquote, it would be a whole different island.
Right. Okay. So it would be different. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
A few people mentioned Terry O'Quinn, and you had great chemistry, and that there was some talk or something of some kind of project between the two of you.
Yeah. When Lost wrapped, we spent a lot of time going around making a little pitch of an idea we had for a TV show that the two of us would be in. But nothing happened with it. It somehow couldn't get written. It couldn't get written in a form that needed to be shot. And the more they turned it over to professional television writers, the less it sounded like the idea we'd had.
That's no good.
The idea we had was to do something where we were kind of lazy old con men trying to skim a buck here and there by pretending to have skills that we didn't really have. Guys that were basically losers, and the kind of guys that when you hit them, they don't get up off the floor. They're hurt. Their nose is bleeding. Not heroes. And the more the more the TV writers worked on it, the more we were kicking down doors and doing fancy things with guns and stuff. And we thought, whoa, that's not. That's completely the opposite idea. We were hoping to be an antidote to heroism.
But you were becoming like Marvel characters.
Truly anti-heroes. We wanted to be the anti-heroes. Guys that are tired at the end of the day. Guys that lose fights. Guys whose guns don't fire. That kind of thing.
I feel like you should reshop that.
Well, and the older we get, the better qualified we are to do it.
Right. It's a better fit. Maybe now. Maybe the time just wasn't then, and the time is now. Seriously, that is how it works.
I think you're kind of right on that.
Because really, some of the shows that worked then, or the ideas or whatever, would never work today, and vice versa. Let's talk.
Not outside the realm of possibility.
Later.
And he and I stay in touch. Terry and I are pals.
You do?
So, yeah.
You see him regularly? You hang out?
We text and tweet, and if he's in New York, I'll see him. He lives in Virginia Beach now, so he's a little harder to reach.
Oh, that's okay.
And he's always shooting somewhere in Hawaii.
Right. Everyone comes to New York at some point or
Sooner or
another, it
later.
seems like.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of hotels for them to stay in, as we know.
Right across the street.
Exactly. All right, so a couple of last fan questions that are more wide-ranging. So when you go to things like conventions, fan conferences or conventions, do you like to talk to fans? Do you get sick of talking about Lost or Person of Interest or whatever it is that they're really obsessed with in the moment?
I'm always happy to talk to people who have found a thing I was on to be exciting and memorable and thrilling. I don't mind having that conversation. I don't thrive on the conversation about how much they hated the ending of the series. You know, that's neither here nor there. It's all right. They can have their opinion, and if we had a lot of time, I could show them the error of their opinion. But that's all right.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
Do you get recognized on the street? I mean, are you
Sure.
somebody else to somebody, to everybody?
Sure.
Do they
I get
tell you who
recognized
you
for
are?
different things. No, so I have to guess when I see people lock eyes with me and they're coming toward me and they're doing this, I think, okay, is this a lost person or a person of interest person? Often it breaks down by age.
Okay.
If they're younger, it's more likely to be lost.
It is.
And
Because people are still watching that now, right? Even who didn't watch it when
Sure.
it was actually first airing.
oh yeah,
Right? It's on, is it on Netflix now? No. I don't know.
It's available on a
Somewhere.
number of platforms, and people that were toddlers when it was on are now binging on it, and so it's generations now of viewers who are excited about it in this present moment.
Right. Do you have like a hat or something that you put on when you don't feel up for that?
I have hats. I wear a lot of
You
hats.
want to describe what they look like so everybody can be on the lookout for
Right.
those? Of course not. Do you listen to podcasts ever? You do?
Yeah.
So, do you have any favorites?
I listen to The Daily every day
Oh, you do?
from the New York Times. I sometimes check in on Lore or Invisibilia.
Yeah.
I tend to want to go to the more atmospheric places.
You're an atmospheric person, I think.
I guess
Yeah.
I am, and I'm not a believer in ghosts and things like that, but I am interested in all talk of things that are a little bit beyond normal perception.
Well, that's interesting. So you don't believe in them, but
Ghosts.
you don't believe in ghosts specifically. So this is very relevant to Evil, to your show now, Evil.
Sure.
So you don't believe in ghosts, but you do like talk of what kinds of things? Like supernatural kinds of things?
Well, I'll tell you what I believe in. I believe in the suggestibility of the human imagination. So I think people can talk others or talk themselves into believing a whole lot of things, or that people can be talked into. I believe in the power of language, the power of rhetoric. I believe in hysteria, self-deception.
Well, that's the human mind, is what that is.
Yeah.
And
So
it is fascinating.
I'm into that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, illness too, or certain things, psychosomatic, like it's the same kind of idea.
Sure.
So you're into the human brain and the tricks it can play, but they're tricks. Or are they?
Are they just features of the way the human brain works? I mean, I dream like other people do. I have dreams that seem significant to me, symbolic, or visitations. They have words in them, or colors, or signals. I don't know what to make of all that.
Okay, so are they the same dreams? Like, do you have a few recurring dreams?
I have some recurring themes. Being lost in a large house of many rooms, that's one of the
Okay.
themes. I have actor dreams, of course. Suddenly, I'm wearing the robes of King Lear, and I'm standing in the wings ready to go on, and I realize that I don't know any of the lines. I mean, I know the storyline, but can I fake it in iambic pentameter? Probably not.
I feel like you could, but that's interesting. I think that's a preparation, right? That's a preparation-related dream, I think. Are you prepared? And it's almost like an imposter syndrome type of scenario you might be doing in your mind.
That's funny.
I feel like I should put a little disclaimer on this that I was a therapist before I did any of this.
All right.
So I'm interested in this too.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated by the human brain and dreams too. So not everybody remembers their dreams much.
I don't remember most of them, I think.
Oh, but you were saying they're very vivid though, right? They have colors, you were saying?
Sure.
And so what are some of the colors you see in your dreams?
Well, I guess most of them seem to me to be in full color. Those that I can recall. But colors are not the chief thing I recall usually. It's more about, I don't know, a visitation from a dead relative, something like that. What's to be made of that?
What is to be made of that? Do you think about it after?
It's in your own. It's in your own mind. It's a thing. It's a story. I think it's a story. One part of your brain is telling another part for purposes unknown to me. But I think it's comforting and a little thrilling too. Strange. It's strange, and it's supranormal. It's not part of the everyday experience. But maybe there's a whole lot of things that aren't part of the everyday experience that I'm not acknowledging.
Well, that's for sure, I think.
Yeah.
For everybody. It's a human way, right? But is it always the same relative or somebody who's the visitation?
It's a narrow cast.
It is? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you analyze it the next day?
I puzzle over it.
Uh-huh.
I try to think, what was this about? Why did I need to hear from, in my imagination or in some cobwebby recess of my brain, why did I need to have that little exchange?
Well, I think that what I remember learning in grad school was, and of course it's all theory, right? Everybody has different theories too. But I think that the one that stuck with me was that part of dreaming is about, like you're saying, there's an emotional need that you're trying to work out. You're working through something in your dream based on something that you're going through, whether or not you're fully aware of it. And then in another way, it's just a jumbling up of random things that you've experienced over that day, let's say, that have filed into your brain and then just come out all jumbled and whatnot.
Right. Like an abstract misfiring of neurons.
Right. And sometimes when I wake up and I have a dream, a lot of times it's so weird, it just doesn't make sense. But then other times I can see that, or as part of it, I can see that bigger theme, I guess, that means something else that I'm going through. And I was trying to work it out in my sleep. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
So when you sit around talking to people, what do you like to talk about? Are you like let's say you're sitting at dinner, you have people over, or you're out somewhere. What's the conversation like?
Well, most people that are engaged in show business, we talk about shows we've seen or movies or TV or who's up, who's down, who's doing good work, that kind of stuff. But that's not when the conversation gets juicy. I'm more interested in, backstories, family stories, weird events, strange things that people have witnessed. Family troubles, just stuff that, continues your human education about how people get along or don't get along. Problem solving, life problem solving. I don't know, when you were a kid and you thought nothing was more boring than hanging out when the adults were talking. But that's where I want to be, and that's where I wanted to be at a fairly early age. From around 12 or 13, I didn't want to be running around the yard. I wanted to listen to the grown-ups because they told stories, and they were often funny or shocking, and because it revealed to you that even as prosaic a couple as your own parents had seen a thing or two and done a thing or two, and
right.
And I don't know, something soothing. Maybe it's just the soothingness of language, just to hear the droning voices, the comfort of the droning voices of your immediate relatives and stuff like that. That's a pleasure, I think. So I'm all for sitting late into the night with with no electronic diversions going on, and just have grown-ups talk.
I love that too. Now, did your parents invite you into the conversation, or were you listening from like the stairs or something?
A little of both. I think the older I got, the more I drew into the circle, closer to the fire.
So you're always fascinated with people and like the human condition, it sounds like, and comforted by it. So what were your younger childhood years like? Was there a lot of family and activity around, or was it quiet?
It was kind of a quiet. I grew up in a tiny little farm town in Iowa, and so it was just, small town stuff, playing outdoors, going to school, family stuff, family get-togethers, dinner at the grandparents, stuff like that. And then my parents had a kind of a social life among other young adults. They would have parties in the basement, dance parties, because there was no place to go to dance in a town our size. So they would be down there playing music, drinking cocktails, and my sister and I would lay just above the room where they would be dancing. There was a radiator, a place where heat came up into the house, and we would lay there with our ear pressed to the radiator and listen to the adult conversations, in the hopes, I guess, of hearing something outrageous or racy or evidence that our parents were drunk, or
Yes.
something like that. It was just good fun.
Or maybe they were mentioning you. They would say something about
right.
you guys.
Yeah.
So then you must have been, I guess, what did you leave for college? Is that when you left the hometown? Sure. Or did you move at any point, or no?
When I went off to college, at the very same time, my parents moved to another town. And it was sort of understood that this was the end of my at-home part of my life. That I was going off to college, but A, I was going to college. B, I was not coming back. I was not coming back to live with them. There would have been no reason. It wasn't a thing any of us desired. So that was it. It was, being tipped out of the nest.
Yeah, what was that separation like? Or
it was fun. It was hard at first, because I had grown up in such a tiny town where everybody knew everybody else, and I had grandparents in the same town and relatives and stuff, and had little experience of city living. So even going to as big a town as Des Moines was shocking to me and disorienting, and I had, I suffered homesickness there for a while. I had never slept in a house where my mother wasn't also sleeping until I went to college.
Never, not even a vacation or anything?
Because we didn't really do
camp
vacations.
Or anything?
No
Nothing
camps.
like that.
Nothing
That
like
must be kind of scary at that age.
It was so strange. I mean,
Or like unsettling.
I had become my own person, and had, in my teenage years, I wasn't home much. I was always out gallivanting or doing plays or what have you. But just, I don't know, it was kind of shocking.
Yeah.
And so for a while there, for a couple of weeks, I didn't know if I was going to make it or not.
Make it at all.
Just survive being away from home.
So you're ready to pack up and go back.
You think about those things. But then I thought, then what? No, that's stupid. I gotta, this is what I said I was going to do. Then let's do it. And then after a while, you get caught up in the new thing.
I think that's so common. I really think more people than we know experience that when they go off to college. I think especially now it's a weird situation, because college is like, there's so much pressure on college. Everything is about college now. Much more than when we were going to college. It's huge. But nobody's really warning the kids who are about to go, you know what? It's a little rough at the beginning. It's a huge change. It's not just what it looks like on Instagram.
Sure. And suddenly you're not surrounded by your old friends and stuff. Everybody's, for the most part, older, far more sophisticated, far more comfortable. You're the new kid.
Yeah, except everybody's in that situation, I think.
But
they're just hiding it.
No one seemed to be sharing my misgivings at the time.
Seemed.
Right. They may have been crying in the pillow,
exactly,
when
that's
they
what
went back to the dorm at night.
I bet they were. I really do. Not
Probably.
Everybody, but I think
Right.
more than you would think at the time. Just like they probably didn't know how you felt.
True. and it wasn't discussed. You're so busy trying to adjust.
Right. How is it making friends in entertainment in Hollywood? What is that like?
It's tricky, only because you have one of the drawbacks of being in show business is you meet more people in the course of your days and years than you're probably meant to meet, that you can properly digest or adjust to. It's so much, and you do so many projects where a sense of ensemble or a sense of closeness among the company is important. But then those jobs very often end very quickly, and then boom, you're off to another place where you are supposed to create like a new circle, a new loving and warm circle that isn't afraid to share things with one another. And if you do that repeatedly over decades, you begin to think, well, it's costing me too much to, learn to love a group of people and then inevitably lose track of them when you've moved on from, ensemble to ensemble to ensemble. So then I think it's inevitable that you stop putting yourself out quite so much, that then you take a more professional stance. And that's like, I show up, I'll make polite conversation with folks, and you may find a like-minded soul and really have a great time, and that may really last even after the project is over. Friend for life, that kind of thing does happen, but not in any. It's such a tiny percentage of just the amount of human intercourse you have in the course of the work.
Yeah, I would think that would be, I could see what you're saying, how you would have to change your approach over time, even if you're not aware that you're changing your approach, right? It might happen subconsciously.
Right. Yeah.
But whereas in the beginning, like, it must be a nice thing to feel part of this ensemble and part of this family.
Sure.
But then it's like, boom, you're with them every day, and then you're not with them at all. And then you kind of feel like you might miss them. Do you, or do you not have time? Is that kind of part of what you're saying, or not so much?
It cuts every which way.
Yeah.
But truly, your classmates in theater school, that's a tight
They're
group.
the ones.
Or the cast of your first New York show, or your first Broadway show, or your first TV show, for that matter. All of those landmarks, there's a circle that you're connected to. But even those don't hold up over time necessarily.
But so Terry, though, is one example.
Yeah, sure.
So somewhere in there.
Yes, he's a wonderful example of how but we were, no matter what show we'd have done, I suppose it helped that it was a popular show and that we both had good parts, but we were men of a similar age, certainly similar philosophy of work, a philosophy of the discipline. Both of us were actors who enjoyed our work, but were really happy to clock out of it at the end of the day. And actors, neither of us were method actors, whatever that means.
Right.
By that I mean we didn't have to get all wound up to play a scene.
You could turn it on when it was time and turn it off.
We didn't have to become angry to play angry.
Which is probably a nice thing.
Right.
A nice balance thing.
Because I've worked with a lot of actors who have to go off in a dark corner and get worked up.
Well, that's hard, I would think.
It's
right?
exhausting. See, but maybe that's a young actor thing.
You know what? You're reminding me of somebody, not what you're talking about. Jesse Eisenberg. Do you know who he is?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. I remember interviewing him after he had done this film. What was the movie? It was with Jason Segel from How I Met Your Mother, and it was about the writer, David Foster Wallace.
Oh, yes.
I think that what he had told me was that it was such a dark, place that he had to go to for that movie that it took him months to recover. So that has to be I would think, so draining. I mean, he said it was so draining. Right. That it's like...
And it was unnecessarily draining. I'm here to tell you.
Okay.
I'm convinced of that.
Really?
In fact, part of the job of a professional actor is to find the shortcuts, to find the ways to show an audience a thing without you having to personally live through it, take after take after take. There are techniques. Every actor has his own little set of tools that save him that Herculean labor, of pushing that huge emotional rock up a steep hill.
So why don't other actors who choose to be method take that approach? How do they not have those tools then? Is it just that they've never been exposed to them, or they thought from the beginning, like, oh, I have to be like Brando or whatever? And
I don't know. A lot of times that has to do with your education or your training.
Right.
And there was such an emphasis for so long in the American theater to do that inward-looking work.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I find now in the later years of my career, it's just like we're all on a dial that's like a clock in terms of how we work. We all start at midnight. We're all trying to get somewhere around 6. You can go one direction, which is method. You can go another direction, which is technical. Hopefully, in time, you arrive at a place like I've been working technically for so long that I have almost magically arrived at a place of sensitivity to language and situation that makes it hard for me not to weep at the sound of certain words, or at the, just if a thing is explained right, or even a stage direction can be so moving. And I never set out. So I find myself doing scenes sometimes where I'm struggling not to weep. It's not even appropriate to the moment, but I have, in working so hard to be technical, I somehow overshot, and now I have both things going on. Like when you're a young actor and you worry when you see that your character has to weep, or that your character has to laugh out loud, something like that, and you think, God, how will I find that? How will I find the genesis of that breath or that expression? And I think now, oh my God, I wish I could turn that off. I wish I didn't have that. I wish it wasn't so damned easy now to weep over something or to laugh out loud.
So what is that about? Does that have something to do with getting older and you are more in touch with your emotional side, or
getting older and just having, I don't know, just having thought about the human condition for so long, or I don't know, just an evolution of empathy in your life, and a growing sense of a feeling of tenderness toward other humans and their foibles and the dilemmas they get themselves into, and stuff like that.
It's interesting. Sometimes I'll find myself watching something on TV or a movie or whatever, and I will be fine just watching all these scenes, whatever's going on. They could be emotional. I'm watching it. I'm engaged. But then suddenly one person says or does something, and it's suddenly I'm crying. This happened to me last night. I was watching the show Unbelievable. It's on Netflix. It's new. It just came out a couple of weeks ago, and it's maybe eight episodes. It's with Toni Collette and... Oh, well. Yeah. But it wasn't Toni Collette who did it. Huh. And Merritt Weaver is also in it. She's fantastic. Love her. And so it's about rapes, different women who've been raped. And at the beginning, I'm watching the first episode, and it's one of those really harsh things that you're watching. Like, it's almost like, I don't really feel like I have it in me to watch another one of these shows, even though it's well done. It was well done from the beginning. I didn't know if I'd do it. See, episode 2 came right on afterwards. And so I just kept watching it, and I was like, not sure if I'm going to stick with this. And then suddenly this woman comes on screen, and she's a rape victim. And I looked at her. You only see her back. And I don't know what it was about her body language, but it really set something off in me. And tears started rolling down my face. And then every time she came on later in that episode, I kept feeling so emotional. So it's so interesting. It's like, she wasn't the first rape victim to come on, but there was something about her that just got me going. It's like unexplainable a little bit, but that's what happens, I think, sometimes when you see these human experiences being played out on TV or on film. It's not just entertainment, it's the human experience that you're engaging with.
Yeah, and that opening or that effect, it can come, out of left field. And it, as you say, it doesn't need to be verbal. It can be just, I don't know.
Yeah. Unexplainable, but
it's, in a way, it's
moving.
comforting to think that our brains are so nuanced and complex in that way that we can't even explain to one another why we wept at something.
Yes. It's funny. It's almost like it brings it full circle to the dreaming that we were talking about at the beginning, right? Here are these things that are going on inside of us that we're not necessarily fully aware of and we don't necessarily understand, but there's something being processed, being felt and being processed.
Yeah. And I think it's important to think about those issues in the course of my work, or maybe every mature actor thinks about those things.
Right. So even if you're not a method actor, you're still thinking about those things.
Sure.
Yeah. It doesn't mean
But maybe that's a thing I've arrived at later in life. But I should also say that I didn't work professionally as an actor until later in life.
Like how much later?
I decided it was my calling in my 30s. And I never made a living at it until in my early 40s. So I had knocked around the world for a spell before I had to begin mining my own experience of life for the purposes of the stage.
So how do you think that impacted everything that's going on now?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's quite possible that being a technical actor, as I was, or thought I was, still think I am, maybe that was just a way not to go a much darker and more confusing journey. I mean, I don't know how I would have survived at some of those New York acting schools, you know.
Right, because they break you down emotionally, right?
Oh, sure.
Like it's almost like serious, deep therapy almost, but it's not necessarily therapeutic.
Right.
Because it's not therapy.
And I'm not sure it necessarily makes you better able to go to Little Rock, Arkansas and do The Importance of Being Earnest.
Right.
I think, and maybe it's that for me, I didn't really, my vision of myself in my work did not include a lot of gritty dramas. I wanted to play, in plays of Oscar Wilde. I wanted to do comedies. I wanted to do silly things and make people laugh, which is why it's so odd, I think, in a way, that I now am known in the camera world for being a sinister or villainous kind of player, because that's so contrary to what I did when I was a stage actor.
So you saw yourself in comedies.
Sure.
So do you kind of wish that you could be in a comedy right now? Or just for fun on the side or something?
I don't need a cast in it.
Yeah.
I'm game, but I'm not a good candidate for a sitcom.
But how do you know? Have you ever?
Well, over the course of the years, I have auditioned for them often enough and not gotten it.
Yeah, but I think just because you don't get it doesn't mean you're not good for it.
Right, and I think sitcom is not maybe my medium. I think maybe I'm playing my comedy now in dramas by finding alternatives in alternative deliveries or alternative stakes or alternative strategies, many of them humor-based, or at least for me, in my own actor brain.
Yeah, I think so.
It's like...
Right. Because it's not like you're this heavy actor,
no.
dramatic,
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Just like, in this moment, I'm going to toy with the person.
Yeah.
Or be just ever so slightly sarcastic, or make fun of something.
Yeah.
And you can do all that and still have really malevolent intent.
And you say that with a little smile.
and see, it's fun.
Yes.
So
it is.
that's why at the end of the day, I don't go home, spooked out by my own work, because I'm really having too much fun.
Right. I would like to see you in like a traditional, not traditional, but like a more of a comedy too, just as an interesting thing. As just a separate thing. It would be fun to see you in both. I'm
up for that.
Yeah.
The thing I'm fond of saying now is people say, you got to do a play, and I go, here's the play I want to do. I want to be tipsy Uncle Charlie that comes in Act 2, has all the good lines for about 20 minutes, and then you wait backstage for the curtain call.
Yes.
That's my theater future.
Right. Because if you're going to do how many shows is it a week? It's a lot
8?
of shows. Exactly.
Yeah, come on.
You don't need
No King Lear.
all that. Exactly.
No King Lear. Maybe my dream is telling me, you don't need to be doing King Lear. Free yourself of that responsibility.
Right.
Free yourself from feeling a responsibility to do Prospero or King Lear or...
So you just interpreted your dream and now it all falls into place.
O'Neill. You don't need to do...
So if you could go into any current TV show, you watch TV?
Yeah.
All right. So let's say you could have a role on any show today. What show would you like to be on?
Well, a show that I like for its mix of the serious and the hysterical is Fleabag. I just think I like it for a lot of reasons. The sheer theatricality of it. The breaking of the fourth wall is delicious on that show. And she's brought that to a very high art. She can spend 1/100th of a second just glancing at the camera and then back into the action, and it makes it meta the way Shakespeare is meta.
Mm-hmm.
We're both in it and without it at the same time. That complexity is fine. And I like that many of the characters on the show, supporting characters, are so silly and yet heartbreaking at the same time.
Yeah, I do love that combo of all of it together in one, because that again is life.
Yeah.
Life is not a comedy,
Right.
Life is not a drama, it's both.
Yeah.
And not like, it's more than just the two of those things. I don't know what it is, but it's more things.
But it shows you that Chekhov was onto something.
Yeah. And a lot of people really do appreciate Fleabag and Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Am I getting her name right? Yeah, I think so. For what she's doing. So looking back, what would you say is one of the best times in your life?
I've had lots of good, the best.
That's why I said one of.
One of.
Or a few of.
I liked when I found myself kind of stranded high and dry in Northeast Florida in my middle 30s, and I knew I had burnt my bridges as far as being a magazine illustrator, and couldn't do that any longer down there.
How'd you burn your bridges?
Just by leaving New York.
Oh, okay. So you were doing fine up here.
Yeah, well, fine-ish.
But why did you decide to leave then?
Romantic entanglement that didn't work out. Of course. So there I was, high and dry in Northeast Florida.
So where are we, Jacksonville or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
St. Augustine in Jacksonville.
Okay.
And so I started doing plays, community theater and stuff. And I had these manual labor day jobs, I worked for a landscape nursery, and I painted houses, and I built decks, mostly outdoor work that didn't require a lot of thought. So I could spend those long days in the sun learning my lines or thinking about the scene work that I was going to do at Theater Jacksonville that evening, and it was a nice balance. And I was so happy to have found the thing I was meant to do. Right.
So it all felt like it was clicking for you.
Simple and pleasurable. My manual labor was a kind of a physical pleasure and was the means by which I could pursue rehearsal at night.
Good for you. On behalf of everybody, I'm glad you had that romantic entanglement. It didn't work out. You ended up there, and then everything changed.
There you go.
So one of the hardest times in your life would be one of?
Oh, goodness. I guess, for a while after a number of the members of my nuclear family passed away, and I was too busy with a TV series at the time, so I rather set aside or delayed dealing with it. Then later, it creeps up on you.
It does. You don't deal with it, and it doesn't go away. It doesn't disappear.
Yeah. And I rather lost my humor and my good spirits for a while.
Do you want to talk about it? Who was
No.
it? I'm happy to talk about it.
I know.
I the
feel
therapist
that.
in me wants
Right,
to
course,
help you talk about it, get it out.
Of course. But it passed. I will say that I did a play at the same time, which may have been ill-chosen because it was a very dark play about the end of life. And you think, man, you could not have picked a worse project,
Wow.
except that I do think, I hate to say that what we do is self-therapy or therapeutic, but it was, I think just every night going down the hole of because he was a very self-conscious character, and he was on stage alone most of the time and just talking about his changing perceptions and trying to entertain his friends as we slowly saw him physically falling apart. And you know, unavoidably, there were line readings I gave that sounded like my father or people I knew.
So you were working it out, and maybe that's why you chose it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah. I mean,
that's
good
what
God.
I'm thinking. I'm thinking you chose it without realizing it purposely.
Yeah. Maybe.
Something inside of you purposely was like, I need to address this in some way. I'm drawn to this for some reason. You did it, and then it was was therapeutic.
Yeah, the first time I read the play, I thought it was the most beautiful thing. And I thought, if you ever mean to go on stage again, this is it.
Really? What was the name of it?
Wakey Wakey, a play by Will Eno. Terribly difficult, but it's so beautiful.
When I told you I asked people questions for you, what they wanted to ask, what they were dying to know, one fan said that she wants to see you in theater again, which is what you said people say, because she saw you in Wakey Wakey and you were so amazing. That's the one she named.
And if I ever met that person, we might talk briefly about the toll of playing something like that at that time in your life. So irrespective of its therapeutic nature, you know, it was rough.
It wiped you out.
It was rough. Totally kicked my ass, as they say.
So it was the material. It wasn't the acting itself. It was the experience of it.
The acting, it was the experience of it. Well, because
like the emotions that you had to go through.
That and because of the physical, my character was in a wheelchair, but I had to slowly, over the course of an hour and a quarter, shrink and lose vigor, lose size. He was a hale and hearty fellow in his wheelchair, and by the end, he's just it's like the breathing
weak
changes, and so it was like going through it.
And you had to do that over and over again in the process of the same play.
8 times a week.
8 times a week. Yeah.
So when they asked if they could extend, I said, I can't do it, or you'll carry me out on a stretcher.
Right. So how did you recover from that after that? It's funny because now we're almost, I feel like you were talking about that Jesse Eisenberg thing.
Yeah.
But for all we know, there was something going on for him that he dealt with in that movie.
Yeah.
That he, in that role, that did that to him. I don't know.
I mean, it is possible for a play to get under your skin, even if you're a technical. I mean, anyone who's done a decent Hamlet knows that without realizing it, they went to a dark place for a while, and it took them a little, only months after it closes will friends and relatives come and say, you got a little dark there.
Oh, really?
For a while. You were a little hard to talk to.
So, but they're talking about on the side when you're not working.
Right. When you thought you were clocked out.
How interesting. So people are picking up on that.
Sure.
Even if you don't realize you're going through it in the moment.
Right. Well, the language is so powerful. It's incantatory. The language is like, it has the language power of prayer or divination, or of spell, casting a self-cast spell. I think a good play like Hamlet or one of those can do that to you. And sure, you go out and party afterwards or, all of that. But over the course of time, you have just spent your days and nights ruminating on these dark thoughts, dark ideas.
Yeah. It's such a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And for everybody in your life, too, not just you.
That's right.
Do you see Carrie go through something similar? Or her roles are probably a little lighter than yours?
Hers are lighter. Yeah, because she's mainly she's a character player. Although, I mean, no one is more powerful. I mean, I've seen her play, terribly sad victims and, stuff you do on Law and Order. You play a mom who tried to kill her own children. That kind of thing. And I watched her go through that. But she has that very at her fingertips. She can go from 0 to 100 on the emotional availability scale in the blink of an eye.
That's pretty impressive.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But then I see it takes her a while to come down off of it. On the day, it's tough. Particularly if you're doing that stuff in front of a camera, that means it's not one take. You don't just get to go there and then say, thanks a lot, I'll see you tomorrow. You do it 12 times, 20 times. And then you learn not to make the mistake of spending it all on the wide shot. You have to learn then, part of the technique of being a camera actor is save it,
Right.
Only give as much as is needed for the shot, because the close-up's where it counts.
And is right.
So don't play the close-up when it's in the long shot.
But also what I've heard from some people is like then it's harder for your person you're on camera with, what do you call it, like your scene partner or whatever, right? Because you're not giving it everything because you can't, you're trying to conserve, but then your scene partner, it's her turn, let's say, to have the close-up. Yeah. And she's got to really bring it.
And of course you do that for your scene partner. Yeah. But I'm talking about a degree of difference that only I would be
right. So the camera's not even necessarily going to pick it up, but you have to preserve it.
My scene partner is getting the same looks, the same music, but it's not hurting me in my heart and stomach the way it will be when we get to the close-up. That will be a little more wrenching.
It's such an internal thing you go through all the time.
It's a lot inside, and your body doesn't know it's make-believe. That's
right. Connected.
Yeah.
Right. It's like when you smile. There have been studies that show, like, you smile, it can trick your brain into thinking that you feel good.
Sure.
So that does, it works the opposite way, too.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're doing it in front of all these people, too, like cast and the crew, whatever.
Right.
And does that take a toll, too? Like, or do you have to not even think about that?
Well, you have to be able to feed off of it. You have to let that attention, that group attention, help you to get there. Like, they're with you.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. So you harness it almost as a positive rather than something that would be more draining. Any regrets in life?
I don't know what they would be, because you could say, well, I wish I'd have known my calling sooner. I wish I'd have, when I first came to New York, I wish I'd have had the nerve to pursue it then and not wait a dozen or more years to figure it out. But these doors, sometimes they open when they're meant to open.
Right. It's like if you had done things differently, then who knows what would have happened.
Right. So the timing is all perhaps perfect.
Yeah. Right. And that's the flip side of it.
Yeah.
It's like we're talking about comedy versus drama. Well, it's not good versus bad. It is what it is. Do you stay friends with anybody besides Terry from the cast of Lost or other shows?
Yeah, I stay in touch with, Jorge, and with, if Daniel Day Kim is around, I'll hang out with him. It was a good group. Ken Leung, Nestor Carbonell, we were all good pals.
And Nestor played Richard, right?
Yeah, Richard Alpert.
Right. Such interesting characters.
The man who never aged.
Man, I know.
Such a great part.
Such a great part.
I mean, such a cool notion. that the writers thought that out.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
What is the image that people generally have of you? People who don't necessarily know you that well. Who do they think Michael Emerson is?
Well, I know they think that I'm a guy that's always in a good mood, and I'm sociable and all of that. And I guess unless they were really close to me, they wouldn't have a sense of me ever having a dark day or a dark thought. I may be misjudging the way people perceive me. And then we're also in the business of projecting an image to the world around us, and maybe that's sometimes defensive. Or
There's so much more beneath the surface, I think, for everybody.
But there's 100 other good answers to that particular question.
Okay.
I can't think of a better one right now.
So then the final question is, who are you really?
I suppose, and if you mean to answer that question properly, the best answer is I am, that small town boy from pick a date or a holiday or a birthday or something that you did when you were 10 or 12. The seeds of who I am were always contained.
So who is that? Describe that 10-year-old.
He's an escapist and bookish and more interested in storytelling and story hearing than in sports or manly work or saving money. Or why would I be an actor if I wanted really to participate in the world of grown-up men? So that's certainly some aspect.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So wait, say that again. So why would I choose to be an actor if I wanted to participate in the world of grown-up men? So what is it? It's that image of a whatever, a more serious sports watching, whatever. You just wouldn't want to
just business
person.
Take care of business.
Right.
My father's litany was Charlie. He called me Charlie. Yeah, Charlie, how are you ever going to get ahead in the world if you don't learn a little bit about money? And I never could. I still really can't.
Wait, why do you call you Charlie? Oh, just Charlie as like a nickname?
Yeah,
but it has nothing to do with
one
your
of
name?
life's mysteries.
Really?
He couldn't tell me.
Did you ask him?
Yeah.
He said, I don't know, I just call you Charlie?
Over the years, yeah. I don't know where it came from. He didn't call my mother by her name either.
What was her name and what did he call her?
My mother's name is Carol, and he always called her Clyde.
So interesting.
So, from where? And she doesn't know.
My son's name is Charlie.
Charlie, that's a good name.
It is a good name.
It's an endearing name.
Yeah, right?
Charlie is one of the friendliest names on the planet, I think.
I agree. And when we were thinking of a name for him, I said, I don't know any Charlie I don't like. Charlie
There you go.
is a good guy. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Nice talking to you.
Okay, so that was Michael Emerson. Be sure to catch my 10-minute or so video with Michael on my Really Famous YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/reallyfamous. Tap on subscribe and hit that red bell so you're notified when a new video is available. I usually post them on Sunday nights, and I have all sorts of goodies that you don't get to hear on the podcast. So give it a shot. It's fun. Speaking of the podcast, if you're not already subscribed, make sure you tap that subscribe button right now. And if you'd like to donate $3 or $1 or $10 or whatever you feel to help me keep Really Famous going, I'd be honored, I'd be thrilled, appreciative, the works. Just click on the link in today's show notes or go to patreon.com/reallyfamous. I'm Kara Mayer Robinson. Thanks for listening. I will talk to you very soon.
Hi, it's Michael Emerson. I just had the most astonishing conversation with Kara. I hope if you have the time that you'll give it a listen. It was pretty remarkable.